Well, would you look at the time? Actually, today that's what we're doing. We're taking a look at time, at least as it relates to evaluation and management coding. Hey there, I'm Victoria. I'm a medical coder, auditor, educator, and content creator, and on my channel I provide tips, tricks, and tutorials that help you be successful in your medical coding career. Today we're continuing on with evaluation and management services, so make sure that you are subscribed and you hit the notification bell so that you can get all of the alerts when I post all kinds of new episodes on E&M coding, career tips, and more. When we're scoring in E&M services, a lot of them are based on either medical decision making or time. Now, when we're calculating time, what counts towards that time? Is it every single second? No, there are only certain things that do count towards that time component. And with time, it has to be time on that date of encounter. So if the provider is reviewing tests 2 days later, that time does not count if we're coding based off of time. Could it still count towards medical decision making? Possibly, but it's not going to count towards time. Time is on the date of the encounter. Now you're probably going to ask me, what about a hospital admission where the patient's admitted like right before midnight at 11:30 and the provider is seeing them and it goes into the next day? Well, if we look at what Medicare says, Medicare guides us that it should be billed as a single service on the date that the encounter began. So what elements can we count towards time for our E&M service? Well, we can count here preparing to see the patient, obtaining or reviewing separately obtained history, performing a medically appropriate exam or evaluation, counseling and education the patient, family, or caregiver, ordering medications, tests, and procedures, referring and communicating with other healthcare professionals when we are not separately reporting that out, so we're not billing it out with a separate CPT code, documenting clinical information in the health record, independently interpreting test results. Again, if we're not separately reporting them out, we're not separately billing those out with a CPT code, and communicating the results to the patient, family, and caregiver, or care coordination. Again, that's not separately reported. So technically speaking, if you are a slow documenter and you're beep, 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 pecking at your keyboard and you want to bill based off of time, you can do that. There may be more efficient uses of that time, but technically that does count towards time per the AMA definitions. Now, what does not count towards time? What doesn't count towards time is first and foremost any procedures that you're doing. You're getting reimbursed for that time in that component of the procedure. So if you're doing something like injection or a biopsy or billing out for something like tobacco cessation, that is all reimbursed within those CPT codes. So you can't double dip that time that you're doing that procedure and count that in your E&M service. Travel time is not counted for the time component for E&M, and then also any teaching that is general and not limited to discussions that is required for the management of a specific patient. Now, if we look in our CPT book at the different time components, it's not consistent across the board. We have things like our office visits where we have a time range given because why not? There are some codes that are only based on time. And then we have some codes like our emergency department visits where we can't code them based off of time. They have to go based off of medical decision making because emergency department is its whole kind of own world. So while something like an inpatient subsequent visit or a skilled nursing facility visit could be time or medical decision making, you'll see things like critical care or prolonged services or discharge codes, which are just based off of time. Prolonged care is kind of a beast too, because we have different prolonged care codes for different locations, like inpatient versus office, and then Medicare has their own prolonged care codes. In our office visit settings, you would have to meet the highest level of service, so a level 5 service, in order to add on the prolonged care. You can't have prolonged care based off of like medical decision making for a level 3 and then add on prolonged care. You have to meet a level 5 service and then add on that time for prolonged care. The non-Medicare ones are pretty easy because the AMA provides grids in the CPT book of exactly what times you need to meet in order to bill for the prolonged care codes. Those are found with the prolonged care code sets, not with like the office visits. You find out, for example, the 99417 is the code that's used for office visits. So under that code, you'll find the little grid of the time that you would need to meet in order to bill for prolonged care. With Medicare, though, for office visits, and you might want to write this in your book because if you get like a test question, especially on it, you'll want to know that Medicare bills office outpatient prolonged care codes with G2212. G2212 is to be used for billing Medicare for prolonged services when it's exceeded the maximum and then another 15 minutes on top of it. For inpatient, we have G0316 for prolonged care for inpatient or observation services. Medicare times are a little different because first off, you have to surpass the maximum time by 15 minutes and they're billed in 15-minute increments. So it's really when you've hit 30 minutes that you can bill the prolonged care code for 15 minutes. So for example, a 99223 is 75 minutes. When we hit the extra 15 and 15, then we can bill that G0316 code. So 75 minutes plus 15 minutes plus the 15-minute increment that we have to bill it in is 105 minutes that we need to bill for prolonged care. So we would bill the 99223 with the G code in order to get the time for the prolonged care, but it has to be 105 minutes. Nursing facility and skilled nursing facility are the same. You have to surpass by 15 minutes, and then there has to be another 15-minute unit to bill for that code, and that's the G0317. Now, if you have some cool fancy E&M grids like I do from NamUs, they have the time components written on these. Now, remember though, you aren't allowed to take this for the CPC exam, and all the online exams, you're really not allowed to take anything but your books, unless they specify like an additional reference or something that you're allowed to take. Now, I do also want to mention that there are grids at the front of the CPT book that do have kind of an easier reference of what the medical decision-making components are, as well as the times, so you can use these to reference during exams. And personally, if it was me, I would take the prolonged care codes and add them on here, as well as maybe at the actual codes. Like I would add on where my nursing facility and skilled nursing facility codes are. I would add on what the prolonged care codes that you can use for those are, and the Medicare ones, and then also note like under the prolonged care codes what the Medicare equivalents are. I'll see if I can either find a grid or put something together, and if so, I will link it in the description below. Because it's just so much easier when you have like a little grid to reference versus having to calculate all of the different times. So that's it for time and prolonged care. In the next video, we'll start taking a look at some case studies. I hope you guys are enjoying this video series. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I will see you guys in the next video. And until then, just keep on coding on.